Environmental weeds of all sorts can really ruin human enjoyment of natural areas as well. And if we have a good look around this spot, you can just see there's all number of different species of vines and things which are taking over. And coming into an area like this where there would usually be a nice variety of native plants that you can look at that also provide homes for native animals, we're starting to see just a handful of invasive species coming in and taking over and really removing any sort of suitable habitat for the native animals that live here.
You may think that you need lots of fancy exotic plants to make a garden look fantastic, but as this Endeavour Prize Home garden shows, by using a selection of natives and some safe exotics, you can make a garden look fantastic. The Department of Natural Resources approached the Endeavour Foundation and offered to make their next Prize Homes garden environmentally weed-free. Greening Australia also helped out by suggesting native plants that could be used to replace the exotic plants that were environmental weeds. Japanese honeysuckle. The best place to look for environmental weeds is in your own backyard.
This is commonly known as the Japanese honeysuckle. It's a very popular garden plant, but we're asking people to perhaps take a closer look at its habit and whether we really want it in our gardens anymore. This plant is starting to be rather destructive in our local bushland because you can see by its habit along this fence, it's starting to sprawl and smother other plants. This is its type of habit it likes. It likes to smother over anything that it can because it's a very aggressive grower. And as you can see, it's sort of starting to smother over this cute little native that's been planted here as a feature plant. But before long it won't be. It will die back because it won't be able to get its sunlight. And this is exactly what it will do in our native environment.
Duranta.
Okay, Helen, we've got an environmental weed here right behind us. I'm just wondering if you could tell us what it is and why it's a problem.
Okay, we've got here Duranta repens. This is a very attractive and very fashionable landscaping plant at the moment. It has beautiful blue flowers which people find very attractive and with lovely orange berries. The problem is it doesn't just stay in the garden. If it stayed in the garden it would be fine, but it doesn't. It escapes into the local bushland. The berries are perhaps attractive to birds, as well as if these are often used as a hedging plant. So the berries perhaps fall off behind the bush and then travel downhill into creek systems, into waterways. And they're just starting to naturalise around our area. So we certainly want people to consider researching some of the plants that they put in their gardens before they do so, to find out whether they have the potential to affect the environment. This is a flower that the Duranta has, which is sort of a mauvey, bluey colour. And then these produce these beautiful bright orange berries, which are be poisonous. So certainly that's a worry for anybody who has children, as well as there's quite a few berries on this, so it's quite prolific as a spreader. This actual piece wasn't taken from this garden, but it's from another site not far away from here where it is naturalised, and so that's why we're rather concerned. We don't want this to get into a beautiful bushland environment.
Environmental escapees. Environmental weeds can find their way anywhere. Here we have Duranta, which has invaded along a road verge.
Okay, Helen, we're here in the urban bushland area. Just wondering if you can point out some of the plants here and tell us a bit about what's going on.
Right. As you can see here, this is the Duranta repens. We saw that first in the garden situation, and this is it, naturalising in our bushland environment. As you can see, it's growing in a thicket, it's coming up, with young plants coming up from underneath. How it got here, we're not quite sure, whether the birds brought it here, whether some people sort of unthinkingly perhaps dumped some garden waste, because the situation is We just don't have one environmental weed here, we have quite an array. And this is what happens in the native bushland. There won't be just one weed that's threatening the whole system, it'll be a multitude.
Mother of millions.
What else we have here is, right behind me over here is the mother of millions. This is soon to be a declared species, and basically we need to reduce its number. But it is thriving in this environment. Further over this way, this is one that should be quite familiar to everybody. This is the lantana. It comes in a variety of flower colours. And as you can see, it is taking over, it's starting to smother this area. It goes up and towards the trees as well as along the ground.
Sisal, hemp or agave.
And here, just further along from the Duranta and the lantana and the mother of millions, is another problem plant. It's an emerging problem. It's called Sisal hemp. And it grows to, as you can see, into huge proportions. And I'm actually standing on lots of its little babies all around.
As you could imagine, plants with prickles on them like this one can be a real problem as environmental weeds. Once these young plants grow up, nothing will be able to get through this area.
Yep, and they'll all grow up into be this size. Just to give some idea of the size that these plants can grow, this is actually a flower stalk. As you can see, the stem is very, very thick. You know, the plant that produced this flower stalk must have been huge, must have been even bigger than the one that we have standing here right at the moment.
What can we do? Tranquil, isn't it? So what can we do to stop environmental weeds affecting our native animals, our bushland, and also our beautiful waterways?
Okay, here's an area where the local communities got together to recognise the value of their local waterway, and they've put in quite a bit of effort getting in around here and ripping out some of the weeds that shouldn't be here, replacing them with some good local native species that are suitable for this environment.
Group around this area have done a really great job at sort of clearing away the weeds, but you just can't do it once. It's something that you have to keep at. This, particularly with persistent plants like this one I'm sitting beside, which is called Madeira vine or lamb's tail vine. And it's called lamb's tail because, if you can see, it's pretty white flower spray sort of dangling down like a newborn lamb's tail. And this particular type of plant is very invasive and it will come back. So it's sort of a matter of, after regeneration, you need to come back and keep weeding around an area. This particular plant has fleshy leaves. It also produces aerial tubers. These are the tubers that the Madeira vine produces. These ones are very small, but they can grow up to about this size. Sometimes, because of these, the vine can be known as a potato vine, because the tubers sort of have that round potato type look. And they can eventually sort of fall down onto the ground, and each one will produce a new plant. This is an example of a tuber that's obviously fallen to the ground, and a new plant is starting to sprout from this. As well, the Madeira vine has tubers already under the ground as part of its root system. So basically, when you're going around regenerating an area and you're weeding and you're pulling out the plant, these tubers will still be in the ground, so you have to go back and sort of every time a new plant emerges, you need to pull it up.
Make sure you don't mistake native plants for weeds.
When we're talking about weeds, it's really important to know what are the weeds. Now, around me, you'll see a plant like this, and you might immediately think, aha, that's wandering Jew, that's a real problem. Well, yes, it is of the wandering Jew family, but it's actually the native wandering Jew, so this one actually does belong here. And so we probably wouldn't advise you sort of ripping it all out, because it can be imbalanced with the local environment. But if it had a white flower, not a blue flower, then it would be the exotic wandering Jew.
Strangling, smothering, weedy vines.
This is an example of Madeira vine, or lamb's tail vine, starting to creep up into a tree. They will eventually reach up into the canopy of that tree, smothering over the top, over the leaves, eventually killing that tree. The Madeira vine will also drop its aerial tubers down to the ground so that smaller plants will start regrowing. So you'll have a big thicket of Madeira vine, which will make walking through it very, very difficult.
Vines that grab you.
This creeper, cat's claw for a name, it has a tendril, it has 3 prongs. These prongs have sharp little claws on them, and these will catch hold of you as you're walking past. This plant will also grow all along the ground, as well as sort of up any trees that it can, and so it makes your passage through, walking through towards, to a creek or just walking along a reserve, very, very difficult and very unpleasant, because this plant will grab you so any chance it gets.
Lots of these weeds, we said, have ruined our enjoyment of a lot of areas. Here I'm walking through a big patch of castor oil plant, which is really causing a bit of a hassle, and it's not very easy to walk through. It's just one example of many different types of weeds that can be a problem and a pain for us.